Welcome back to another episode of Adam's Fall. You know, Jesus had some so-called weird sayings and parables. And one parable that has always struck me as particularly odd, but also very scientific, is the parable of the unclean spirit. In a recent video, I talked about the amazing cognitive behavioral therapy techniques used in Doctrine and Covenants 121 and 122 in the LDS Mormon scriptures. I approached that from a scientific, psychological perspective, and I'm also going to do the same with this parable because it is really, truly enlightening. What seems at first to be weird really has a lot of truth about how humans work, how addiction works, and how people actually make long-lasting change in their lives. This parable is really a description of reality. As you can see, it comes from Matthew chapter 12, verses 43 to 45, and it reads, "When the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places, seeking rest, and findeth none." So I really love this verse. When a spirit is cast out of somebody, or when they change their lives and something that was holding on to them they let go of or get rid of, let's say an addiction or a bad habit, or some spirit that has taken possession of them, remember, there's such a thing as wine and spirits, because people thought that a spirit was literally taking over them when they drank a strong drink. It's because their personality changed. So there is such a thing as a spirit about somebody. School spirit. There's a spirit of a country. And so things like spirits possess us. These can also be habits or vices that we have. And so when a person endeavors to conquer a habit, they get rid of this so-called spirit that has possession of them. Now you can see, interestingly, Jesus equates getting rid of this, let's say, bad habit or vice, as if this spirit, something that possessed that person, has now left. And so that spirit leaves, and it's as if it cannot find another home. It just cannot find rest. And so naturally, it wants to come back where it had a home. This rings true for a lot of addiction. So when somebody tries to change a behavior like I have, I've struggled with weight and eating behaviors for much of my life, and I've gained and lost hundreds of pounds. Now, you would like to say that when you lose weight, which I've done a lot of, that you would just conquer that issue and you would be done with it. But nothing is farther from the truth. It is as if the spirit that had you, although gone for a little period, is just waiting to come back and re-inhabit you. And often it does, as it has me. I then get back into my old eating behaviors. So let's take a look at verse 44, which says, "Then he saith, I will return into my house from whence I came out. And when he is come, he findeth it empty, swept, and garnished." So we read a lot about how Jesus talks about the Pharisees, how on the outside, in word and in deed, they looked like they were all clean and good and perfect individuals, but inside they were full of dead man's bones. They were whited sepulchres, but inside they were empty. So this verse talks about how the person that is making the change in their life, if they're not careful, and if they're just doing it on the outside, but they have not filled the house with anything, then it's possible that the spirit can once again find home in them. In fact, that is a description of how many people fall back into old habits. That is the norm. We do things, we change our practices, so to speak. We have new actions. We clean our lives up. Like Jesus says, the house was swept and garnished, cleaned up, so to speak. But is it full or is it empty? Is it just that the actions have changed? Or, as Jesus often talks about, has the heart been made different? Jesus always talks about the heart. So my interpretation of the scripture is that the person who changes, who just changes their actions, cleans up their actions, but their soul, their heart has not been changed, is not full of the Spirit, so to speak, or as I think Jesus would put it, full of love, then they can easily just fall back into old patterns and be repossessed by the spirit that formerly had them. In my mind, Jesus always talked about the heart, not just outer actions. And it is only divine love, I think, that can truly fill a house that Jesus would inhabit. And it is this divine love that is shown to be lacking when a person is again re-inhabited by a, quote, evil spirit. Let's read the final verse. Then goeth he and taketh with himself 7 other spirits, more wicked than himself, and they enter in and dwell there, and the last state of that man is worse than the first. Even so shall it be also unto this wicked generation. And this is an amazing parable because it describes how reality works. You know, when I've lost weight and gained it back, have I always just gained the exact amount of weight back that I lost? No, often I've gained more weight. And this is true of many other people. It is often the case that when you make a change and you don't stick with it, you don't have the right spirit about you, the divine love instilled within you that helps prevent you from re-engaging with those old habits, you end up worse than when you started. You actually become more addicted to the substance than when you were before. It is as if it gets reinforced. So Jesus is not just giving us advice in his sayings or parables, but in reality, showing us how the world works. This is exactly how addiction works. The danger is that you can be left worse off than when you began. So the key from this parable for me is, what do we fill the house with? Do we fill it with secular knowledge? Do we just fill it with practices, cleaning up our house? Or do we need a special spirit? Do we need Jesus' spirit, divine love, to inhabit the house so we don't just fall back into our previous habits? I thank you for your time and attention to this fascinating parable. Look forward to your comments and suggestions. Until the next video.